owning a own house is a dream come true moment, especially when the company, the real estate developers hand you the keys. You get the keys officially. The flat or the apartment or your house is your own house. A dream come true moment is happening. It's a great joy. I'm talking about China, one of the largest countries which has the largest population. A large number of people obviously wanted to have their own house, their own homes, but they never got the key. They paid everything to the real estate company. They paid everything what they had to pay, but they never got the keys. They never got the flat or they never got the apartments. That is a heartbreak moment. Yes, in this radar, I am Arjun Shankar, and we are talking about the failure and the heartbreak of Evergrande, one of the biggest real estate developers of China. What exactly happened? And is it spinning into an economic crisis? We'll find it out. So what is this Evergrande? It's one of the biggest real estate developers in China, and at one point of time, they even had a total net worth of almost $51 billion. And yes, it is $51 billion. $51 billion is huge when you compare countries' GDP. Especially take a look at the GDP of Panama, Bulgaria, Paraguay, and Slovakia. The GDP of this total, all these countries, or individually when you take the GDP of this country, it is lesser than Evergrande's net worth. So this is a huge real estate company, which was one of the most important engines of China's growth. So China was actually using property as one big engine of growth. But what really happened is this company failed because long then, China was using the model called the borrow and build model. What is this borrow and build model? We'll understand. But just imagine back in 2012, 11, 12, 13, just in 2 years, look at the massive increase in the real estate properties of China. You'll not believe the amount of cement that was used in China in 2 years was more than what United States of America used in the 20th century. My God, just imagine what is the extent of the infrastructure push which China was getting. But it was doing good. Evergrande was one of the biggest companies. They not only had flats, apartments, shopping malls, they even had a football team. They had sponsoring everything. They were huge people, but they were actually moving very fast, very quickly with the funds. But the problem is, they captured the imagination of Chinese people. That was a time when a lot of people, urbanization was happening much more rapidly. A lot of people from the rural areas of China were interested to come to the urban cities. So if you still go to the Chinese cities, you can still see a lot of ghost towers, huge skyscrapers, unfinished building with huge glasses, with no inhabitants, just standing ghost towers. All these are properties of Evergrande. So what the problem is, the borrow and build model is, this company used the pre-sales model to get the money. You're buying a flat from Evergrande. They buy the properties very quickly. They acquire the land very quickly. You get the property, you quickly start the construction, and even at the pre-sale or the construction phase, they take your full money and they use it in the construction. So you have given your full money, but you are yet to receive your flat. Likewise, they take another property. Likewise, Evergrande took a lot of properties on a massive scale, got money at pre-sales level, and started to pump it, roll this money into the economy. But what happened is, ultimately, at one point of time, they could not complete all the flats or the apartments. What happened is, a lot of Chinese people did not get the construction, did not get their flat, did not get their apartment, could not make a home. The company started to spiral out, the company started to fail, creating a big economic crisis. Because This is just like a network. If one thing falls, if one thing goes worse, everything like a domino effect, it goes down. So that is one reason how Evergrande spun out of proportion. So what exactly is the impact here? The company called Evergrande was a miracle engine of China. China once really boasted about Evergrande because being one of the property. It's not the company, it's the industry, the property industry, the real estate industry was one of the miracle engines, and the company definitely was running it. But the problem is it starts to grow into heavy debts. They they could not pay the interest. They could not deliver houses to the common people of China. Everything was going out of proportion. And this was the time when you should also see the aging population. China has a large number of aging population. Once they had a huge demand in China for houses and apartments in the urban areas, which was slowly coming down. So the borrow and build model of the Evergrande and the Chinese companies were not working, and everything was failing. So this was a big blow. So this not only created a problem for the common people, millions of people were rendered homeless because they did not get their home, but also it created a big ripple impact. What is the ripple effect or the ripple impact that it has created in China? Is number one, the most of the industries depending on this, the infrastructure industry, especially cement, steel, and the number of jobs that this industry offered, everything went down, rendering people jobless. The construction industry completely went down. So it also sent a ripple across this, the job sector and the other industries which were dependent on real estate. So one big reason why the Evergrande got a pause is when the Chinese government started to intervene. Because Chinese government understood that this is going out of proportion and it's time to control the real estate growth in China. That is what after 2020 they launched a program, they launched a law called the Three Red Lines Policy. China came up with the Three Red Lines Policy, means China has got three important, it is applicable to all the developers. Like you have one thing, it depends upon how much money you have, how much assets you have, how much should you lend. So there are certain criteria that they brought in, and for each line you need to get a pass. If the company is getting all the lines clear, means the developer company can exist. But it is, if it is a red line for all this, so many parameters, and if it is a red line for some parameters, that means that is a check on the developer or the real estate industry. So this Three Red Lines Policy was also very pivotal in controlling the failure of this Evergrande real estate property thing. So the impact is not ending here. The company Evergrande was delisted from the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. So when you delist a company, the value, the glory of the company is all doomed. That was one big impact. And let's go back to 2008, and I'm sure you must have heard about the Lehman Brothers, which started a world banking financial crisis, or the banking crisis of 2008, where the credit, everything was so tied up with this that the whole world witnessed problems of the banking crisis of the Lehman Brothers. This Evergrande crisis had the potential and the potency to have a crisis of this level, but China, Beijing is containing it like a virus. China is containing the virus so that it doesn't spread and destroy the Chinese economy. The Chinese government is working really hard to contain it like a virus. But still, there are impacts around the world, which we'll discuss. Definitely, one of the impact is definitely the trust. Because the foreign investors who used to trust in Chinese industries, the Chinese market, the Chinese prudency of the industries, had now started to raise eyebrows and they have started to question it. And the biggest thing is China used to flaunt this, the model called build, borrow, build, grow, repeat. Borrow, build, grow, repeat. This model is now no longer working. Investors have lost their trust, and even some of the spillovers which has got in the abroad. It has got even larger spillovers, like countries like Australia, Africa, regions like Australia, Africa, who were once exporting cement, energy, steel, are now hit because China does not have a market right now. So people who were exporting to China, their market is actually now hit. So one of the biggest advantages here is a lot of investors and a lot of other people who used to fund money to China are rethinking the geographical location, especially India, Vietnam. India, Vietnam, and Mexico is actually becoming alternate centers of investment. So people who used to park their money, who used to pump the money in Chinese industries, are now rethinking. And India, Mexico, and Vietnam is existing as a next important destination. So definitely, a small thing can have huge repercussion around the world. The Evergrande crisis is not a economic crisis, or it is contained by China, but it is a big lesson for China from an international perspective as an engine of growth, that it's high time that it should rethink about the model of development rather than borrow, build, grow. Model should be changed. And apart from property, real estate, it's time that China should rework and think about other industries like tech, entrepreneurship, and other areas too. So it may not have spiraled into a huge economic crisis, but definitely this is an alarm. This is an important signal for China and also to the world that having this property real estate model, simply rolling and pumping money without creating proper assets, can be dangerous for the economy. So that is a great lesson. So we'll catch up with another important topic with Radar. This is Arjun R. Shankar.